Okay. Hello, good old Uncle Kenny's here. How you doing? Oh, this weather sucks. Thank God I'll be in Florida in a few days. Here we go. Here's my favorite Fujifilm lens in the whole world, the 16mm 1.4. Mounted on the X-Pro3, which I have tested the ever-loving hell out of, and gone over and over and over again, endlessly. A couple surprising things. First, let's get a couple things out of the way, because everybody's going to ask me about this camera strap. Where'd I get it? And I make all my own camera straps by hand. Yes, indeedly. Actually, as I've said countless thousands of times, when it comes to cameras and lenses, especially ones that cost over $500, which is basically all of them, I take camera and lens reviews very seriously, even though I sometimes, well, quite often actually, joke and, you know, use some crazy voices in my videos. That doesn't mean I actually don't take the review itself extremely seriously. I really like to get that out of the way, especially at the start of 2020 here. I do take them very seriously. Let's actually address, before we actually get into the review, I'm going to show you something here, and no one's talked about this. It's a big secret of the X-Pro3. I'm going to get the 800-pound gorilla out of the room and show you a trick that really shouldn't be a trick, because any Fujifilm user knows that most all of the buttons on any Fujifilm camera are highly customizable. So, yeah, there we go. Let me move my focus point over here. Yeah, there we go. Step number 1, take a shot. Step number 2, I'm going to hit the front button on the viewfinder lever. Yeah, and without taking my eye off the camera, which I just did just to look into this camera as I'm talking to you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press in on the rear command dial to give me a 100% view of the shot. Let's go over that again, okay? And then we're going to talk about why this is important. And watch, because this is how I would be doing photography. Or you would be doing photography out in the street. You see I actually have this front button that's on the front of the viewfinder lever set for playback, right? Much, much better, because I actually don't have to move my hand or my thumb to hit the playback button. I actually don't have to do that on the X-Pro3 here. You actually do have to do that on the X-T3 and other Fujifilm cameras. Still have to move my thumb. It's a lot easier because my middle finger is already up here. So let's do that again. Step number 1, 2, 3. So that's shot, preview, and zoom. Yeah, let's do that again really, really quickly, okay? 1, 2, oh. Notice how quick that was? Now, let's do what other people are complaining about, and let's assume for a second that this is a rear-facing LCD display on, say, a XH1 or Fujifilm X-T3, where the LCD display is facing outwards towards the shooter, right? Yeah? So I'm going to take a shot. Yeah, took the shot. I'm going to hit the playback button. Okay, there's the shot. I'm going to zoom in. There was more time and more steps involved in scenario number 2 than there was in scenario number 1. It's really, really, really important. That's why before I do the full review on the X-Pro3, let's go over that again really quickly. Now this is what I do, okay? Shot, preview, and zoom if necessary. Yeah, that was pretty quick. Now let's assume once again that this is the X-T3 or XH1, and that I want to look at the chimp like a monkey off the back of the LCD display. And it's okay. However, you shouldn't be chimping like every 5 seconds or every shot. It's kind of ridiculous, right? Okay, so shot, take my face away, hit the preview button or the playback button, wherever you choose to have that set, even the default position. Okay, then more time, more steps involved. Everybody complaining about the inward-facing LCD display, please unpucker yourselves. Okay, I just showed you a faster, more efficient way. Also, too, if the sun is really bright outside, yeah, you know, you have that glare. You don't actually have a glare looking through the EVF. Wonderful thing. Also, too, a really important point I wanted to make about the X-Pro3. I've looked at a lot of LCD displays. The X-Pro3, whether it's inward or outwards facing, okay, let's forget about that. We just kind of nullify that. The X-Pro3 actually has the nicest LCD display that I've actually ever seen on any camera. It's 1.62 million dot LCD display on the X-Pro3. So I'm glad I got those out of the way. Yeah, I think that's kind of important. Now let's actually go to the go to the review of the X-Pro 3, and I'm just looking at some of my notes that I made. And of course, I went over these, and when I'm recommending, a nearly $2,000 camera, I take that very seriously. And of course, it has to be taken into the scope of what it is relative to everything else that's out there also. Anybody that's familiar with Fujifilm doesn't neglect the highly polished product, attention to detail, perpetual firmware upgrades that signify Fujifilm cameras, and this is right at the pinnacle of that. It absolutely is. And God knows, how many Fujifilm cameras do I own right now? 8. I've owned over a dozen. Actually, I've owned way over a dozen. So let's go over some of the minor specifications, but this is not really important because you can get a freaking specification chart info on the X-Pro 3 anywhere on the internet, and that's not why you're watching this video. But there are a couple key things that I should actually mention. With the use of the OVF, the optical viewfinder, you've actually got extended battery life. The battery life, even strictly using the EVF on the X-Pro 3, if you wanted to do that, is quite long. Also, too, one of the advantages, obviously, is the case of the X-Pro 2 also, but someone might not have ever owned the X-Pro 1 or X-Pro 2, and you might not know this. The preview border for capturing action or street photography as it enters the frame is very helpful for the optical viewfinder. That's extremely nice, which is great for street photography. Also, another couple great advantages on the X-Pro 3, even over that of the X-T3 for street photography, I'll mention here in a few minutes. I say electronic viewfinder is also extremely nice, 3.69 million dots of resolution with a magnification of 0.66, and the OVF has a magnification of 0.52. As I already said, the LCD on the X-Pro 3 is better. Literally better than any LCD I've seen on any other digital camera. Here's one advantage. The X-Pro 3 is -6 EV focusing versus -3 for the X-T3. I've actually tested this in a basically dark room. Now you see, most people don't do photography of stuff they can't see, unless of course it's a time exposure on a tripod, right? But I'm taking pictures of basically things I can't see. Now this camera, not that it hasn't been good up to now, like the X-T3 or even a Nikon D500, which is amazing for low light. Now things have gotten to the point, and I'm not talking about the autofocus assist lamp, where the camera has gotten better. I'm taking pictures of things that I can't even freaking see. We're not talking about flash photography or, any sort of assist lamp usage. And that's actually quite incredible. So -6 EV, which is great for dark, dimly lit street photography. However, you're taking street photos of things you can barely see, you might be a different breed of person, but that's okay. I don't judge anybody. But this is a paramount feature for street photography. Improved diopter adjustment wheel, so you don't actually move it anymore. It's actually greatly recessed. This is, of course, the third iteration product. The X-Pro 1, the X-Pro 2, which I also currently own, and this, the X-Pro 3. Extremely well polished product. Another thing people don't mention, and most people are watching YouTube videos on their iPhone or iPad. You don't frigging need 4K video. You just don't. 1080 looks excellent. And the X-Pro 3 has, in 1080p, 60-minute recording time. Okay? I don't upload 4K video of my bald, tattooed personage to YouTube. It's not needed because 99% of the viewers, somewhere around there, are looking at it on an iPad or iPad or iPhone. I said iPro. The sub-display, of course, we actually have now the sub-display that's like on the top of the GFX 50S, the top of the XH1, which everybody loves and apparently has a copy of. Now, factory default, this isn't actually set to show you, shutter speed, aperture, battery life, yada yada. And of course, it's completely customizable, but that's what I have it set to. I would never need to see film simulations, which I know people love film simulations. I don't use it. I don't actually believe in turning your camera into a post-production tool. As much as people want to talk about film simulations, I don't believe in them personally. I don't care about them because if I want it to look a certain way, it's much better to do that in post-production a la the computer than it is to do it in the camera. So the actual sub-display on the back of the camera, which is the only place it would damn well fit, excuse my language, is on the back of the X-Pro 3. A very, very welcome feature. Also, too, the LCD is protected, and there's always an issue in the past where people are banging their cameras on doorknobs and whatnot, as I've done in the past, not anytime recently, and it's actually nice to have the LCD display on the back. Actually, I'd be perfectly happy with this camera if it didn't even have an LCD display at all. There are some Leica cameras you can't even look at the image until you get home and pop the SD card slot into the computer. Form follows function, and that's what people don't understand about the X-Pro3 and what the heck it actually is. So I absolutely love the sub-display and the fact that it's completely customizable. I've got it just the way I want. I just got it with the same settings as I do as the top display of my GFX50S and my XH1 Fujifilm camera. As I already just got done saying, form follows function. Real photographers are not heads down in the field staring at their LCD displays, you know? This is not really how you do photography. You know, are you doing a wedding and you now I need to redo that shot again. That's not, you know, it's not how stuff is done. It's just not. Sorry. This is not an X-T3. This is the X-Pro3. Well, it has the exact same sensor and image processing engine. Form follows function. Repeat after me. And the X-Pro3 is exactly what it's meant to be for. Street, reportage, photojournalism. And by the way, did I mention, I did about a week ago, that there's not another rangefinder, digital rangefinder styled camera. I said rangefinder styled, okay, not rangefinder. Rangefinder style camera out there that's anywhere near as close. And I've used the Leica Q and the Leica Q2, by the way. There's nothing that's even remotely close to this. An autofocus speed, acquisition, nothing. With the X-Pro3, Fujifilm owns that arena completely, just like they did with the GFX series of cameras. Like I said, the EVF has 3.7 million dots effectively of resolution. Peeping quickly there and pressing the rear command dial to zoom in, as I just got done showing you the first of this video, was way faster than removing your face, hitting the playback button, and then zooming in either with your fingers or with the rear command dial. It's faster. It's better. Yeah, and it's also more stealthy. In my opinion, that's a fact. I can chimp faster, like I said, you know, by hitting the EVF and the rear command dial. The EVF in the X-Pro3 is extremely nice. Stop complaining about the X-Pro3 LCD facing inwards. If that's really a problem for you, you've, number one, not used the X-Pro3. It's like, that's no big deal. You know, I understand the way it is. Or the X-T3 is for you. I didn't know that on the 60 later, because I'm not a video guy and I really don't care about video, even though I make lots of videos, that you could do 60 minutes of 1080p. I don't upload 4K videos of my face. People don't need it. That's wonderful that this does 60 minutes of 1080p. People complain about the fact that it's a 2.5mm microphone jack over here rather than a 3.5. Well, the X-Pro3 is not designed as a video-centric camera, but if you go on eBay, you can buy a 2.5mm to 3.5mm male-to-female adapter jack, and they're like $1 a piece, and I got quite a few of them. So I'm going to use this for my video making down in Florida when I head out there later this week. Let's actually get on to what this camera is and the totality of the review on the X-Pro3. Fujifilm did for a medium format with the GFX series, like the cheaper, faster, better. Fujifilm also did for their digital rangefinders what they also did for medium format with this stealthy-ish style camera for street, event, photojournalism, and reportage. It's very fast, very inexpensive. You know, you compare this to a Leica Q camera. By the way, when you get dust on the sensor on that camera, you can't clean it because the lens is, it's on there. You get dust on the sensor, you're up Poop Creek. Actually, it's a nice camera, but it's nowhere near as fast or as useful as this camera. Nowhere, and this is a lot cheaper. And it's made better, and it's more reliable. On and on and on and on. That's actually the next fastest, cool, awesome street photojournalism camera. And of course, it's a fixed lens. It is what it is, but it's obnoxiously expensive. I'm just making a comparison. People say, well, that's expensive. I go, compared to what? People say the GFX 100 is expensive. Compared to what? It's the world's fastest medium format camera, the world's only IBIS medium format camera. It's incredible. It blows everything else out of the water. For what this is and what it's designed for, that sector of the camera market, stealthy street photographer, this is it. This is sitting on the top of Mount Everest. This is the top of the heap for what it is. Form follows function. It's very refined and polished. It's made in Japan. It is a magnesium main body, but it is a titanium stamping and machining top and bottom plate. There is a Dura silver and a Dura black. People complain, actually, and no one's explained this because they don't know what the hell it is. It's a vacuum deposited crystalline growth that's placed onto the top and bottom plate that makes it basically impervious. It's basically like the no scratch, no stick stuff on a Teflon pan. It's different actually. It's crystalline growth, just like the AR coating on your lenses. You know that greenish cat you see on your AR coated lenses? These aren't AR coated. Most of my glasses are. What it does is it actually wicks the oil away from your fingers, and it makes it look dirty. But what it is the little crystals, believe it or not, they're tiny little trillions of spikes of crystals that protect the finish from scratches. But those crystals, they act like wicks, and it actually draws in that. If you actually take a small pad and you dampen it with some rubbing alcohol, because people ask, what about the Dura Black and Dura Silver? They show fingerprints. It's because people don't, number one, can't talk. Number one, don't know how to clean it. Number two, don't know what it is and why it does that. You know, it's meant to protect the top and bottom plate from scratches. But the way it does that is it's a vacuum deposited crystalline growth, which wicks the sweat and oils away from your hands. You just clean it with some 70% isopropyl rubbing alcohol. Don't make it wet, okay? Damp, not wet. There's a difference between damp and wet. I want you damaging your camera by having something soaking wet and having liquid pour around the dials. I'm not saying that, so it's very important. Now, compared to what... I need to take a drink, yeah. Non-alcoholic, okay? For example, compared to the X-T3, which everybody wants me to compare it to, obviously. So since the same image sensor and image processing engine, X-T3 obviously is $1,300. This is $1,800. There's a $500 difference there. And this is due mostly to the hybrid viewfinder, the EVF, OVF, and the tiny sub pop-up, the ERF. It's actually very expensive to produce and manufacture. It's also made in Japan with titanium top and bottom plates. So the totality of this comprises the $500 cost difference. Made in Japan, and the hybrid viewfinder is expensive and timely to actually manufacture. What would happen if you made a Leica, extremely reliable with incredibly fast autofocus, at 1/10 the price? Ta-da! Trying to make simple analogies of what the X-Pro3. I mean, when you talk about stuff, I always ask people, you know, compared to what? Say, well, compared to what? Should be my motto. I like to stick it on a T-shirt. That also with how sharp is it? Those would be my two mottos. Compared to what and how sharp is it? X-T3 is trying to think of a simple analogy. Is like the do-it-all, utilitarian, reliable Toyota. The X-Pro3 is like a polished and refined, high-end Italian car. The X-T3 is kind of like a citizen watch, which, by the way, is the best made, most reliable, cheap watch out there. The X-T3, like a citizen watch. Got 100 dials and possibilities. They're really fancy. I love the really fancy citizen watches. The X-Pro3 is like a simple yet elegant Rolex. All it does is tell time and show you the date. Even a lot of Rolexes don't even show you the date. I've owned a couple Rolexes, by the way. I always was afraid when I wore my two-tone gold Submariner out in public. I mean, I was afraid I was going to be beaten over the head for my Rolex. So I stopped wearing my Rolex. However, this looks like an insignificant camera to most people, unless you're like a camera file. You know, it just looks like a plain... Oh, actually, it doesn't. It's extremely elegant. I actually take that back, but you know, it doesn't scream tons of... Well, actually, it does if you feel it. If you're a connoisseur of camera, it does scream tons of money. So I kind of take that back on myself. X-Pro3 obviously is a street and travel camera, and the camera that you keep tucked underneath your jacket, whereas the X-T3 is a round-the-neck camera, mirrorless evolution and perfection, final end of perfection of DSLRs, and it's for general use, obviously. So same image processing engine and sensor, you know, high buffer rate, 11 frames per second. I don't need to read specifications to you. A review shouldn't be about reading boring specifications you could find on B&H Photo. X-Pro3 really is polished, elegant perfection. And if you think I sound like a Fujifilm commercial, the answer to that is no. I buy my own stuff. I spend a lot of money on Fujifilm equipment. I am actually the intelligent critter that actually knows what the hell a good camera is versus a great camera versus a blah camera. All the mouth squeaking about the LCDs are those that don't understand that form follows function, but mostly so they just, you know, have been watching YouTube reviews and they don't get what it is. Like I said, I showed you at the beginning of this video, you can do it way faster than you can with a rear-facing LCD. Just keep your darn eye in the viewfinder. By the way, did I mention, of course, the obvious fact that the optical viewfinder is much larger? For glasses wearers like me, huge advantage. nice and big. The X-Pro3 is designed as a fast, simple, low-profile, purist camera. Wink, wink, when I say purist, I mean a seasoned older photographer who grew up with film cameras. This is for people who don't need to chimp off of the LCD display or chimp. They have to be EVF or LCD, it doesn't matter which one it is. People don't have to chimp every 10 seconds at every shot. The X-Pro3 and, you know, wanting to, because you're supposed to complain about everything. And I really do like complaining, actually. I'm a person that loves to complain. But, you know, I thought about a lot of things I could complain about the, you know, trying to think of things to complain about the X-Pro3. But honestly, I can't. And of course, I'm not calling it a perfect camera, but it's pretty damn close. I can't find anything to complain about. If there's something that, since people love to whine and complain on the internet, you can actually see framing guidelines for the 18mm, which I can't stand that lens. That's the only Fujifilm lens I hate. And you can't see it on my favorite Fujifilm lens, on the 16mm 1.4. But the answer to that is, I still don't give a damn, you know. Using the optical, I don't need to see the framing guidelines for it. I focus in on my shot and I can crop it in post. I don't need to be that precise on it. You will get a feel of where that framing guideline roughly is, and if you don't like it, you could crop it some more in post on your computer. The only shocking part about the X-Pro3 that I found was that I love it a lot more than I thought I would. I knew, I mean, since I had it for 3 days in the Photo Plus convention in New York, since having it and owning the X-Pro3, this is mine, by the way, mine. I love it a lot more than I thought I would, and that's taking into consideration how great the X-T3 also is. It really does. Even though I was a blind person, you can literally just feel, not saying the X-T3 is less, I'm just saying you can literally feel. It's kind of like, you know, if you were to lay your hands as a blind person, or blindfolded on a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, it's just like, oh my God, you could just feel it. You could just like, I don't know. Trying to think something relevant to Italy or France. Just, you know, highly polished product. It really is. Every part about it just screams quality. For an inexpensive price, too. Once again, compared to what? Now, this is a fast but minimalistic design. Kind of like, reminds me of an iPad, which only has one button. Obviously, this has a lot more than one buttons. Of course, it's completely customizable. I actually love the fact that the Q menu, unlike any other Fujifilm camera, as I showed you in X-Pro3 tips and tricks, it's customizable. I don't need 20 buttons when I'm hit the Q button to choose from. I don't need that many. You can customize it down to 16 or 8 or even 4. I chose 8. That's even more than what I need. I only need 5 or 6. And also, too, in addition to that fact, you can set it for transparency. You normally, on any other Fujifilm camera, when you hit the Q button, everything turns black and you have your Q menu. On this, you can customize it, which is where I have it set, for transparency. In other words, you can be selecting stuff in your menu while also, too, subconsciously, so to say, keeping your eye on what the hell's going on through the viewfinder, which is like a heads-up display, which is nice. I hope Fujifilm adopts that to all their future product cameras. In finalizing out the X-Pro3 review, I have to call it a compact, extremely polished, and extremely refined, like fine wine, champagne, and caviar. Just really finely polished and refined camera. It's a super fast autofocusing piece of polished near perfection. Since I can't call any camera perfection, even though this really comes extremely close. For what it is, I mean, there's nothing, like I said, I have to reiterate, there is nothing in a rangefinder styled camera. Keyword there being style. I know what the hell a real rangefinder is. A rangefinder style camera that comes anywhere near within 100 miles of this for autofocus speed, acquisition, reliability, try on and on. I mean, this is it. Like 10 years ago, I mean, today, because everybody kind of squeaks and moans on the internet, oh my God, it's a rear-facing LCD. Everybody squeaks and complains. You know it's true. I complain too. But I mean, if you went back 5 or 10 years ago, even 2 years ago, like, you know, you gave it to somebody, a group of people for a week, like, oh my God, when can I own this camera? That's the reality. You know, we all like pay attention to people squeaking on the internet, but the reality is, you know, 99.9% of the people out there are just going, ooh, they're not squeaking. And I already showed you why it's faster to go through the EVF. If, That's only if you have to be chimping on every picture every 5 milliseconds. In closing out the review on the X-Pro3, I give it actually a 9.5 stars out of 10. I mean that seriously because I do take camera reviews very seriously when it comes to, you know, any product that costs money. By costing money, I mean basically $500 and up. I take it seriously because I never want to hear from somebody, and you can never make everybody happy. It doesn't matter how good or great you are in your reviews. You know, someone's always going to be unhappy. It's like, it wasn't the color that I like. Well, you know, that's personal preference. I can't, you know, it's also true with lenses. People want what they want. But you could also make extremely logical, intelligent, empirical reviews about lenses, which I do. This is a very finely polished piece of perfection. And by perfection, I mean angelic perfection, which would mean, by angelic, of course, you would say something that's a 9.5 out of 10, right? Real angelic. I like this camera a whole lot more than I thought I would. I really do. The rear-facing, or inward-facing, not rear-facing, inward-facing LCD is, like I said, I'd be happy if it didn't have an LCD. I would be, because it's that fast, that great. I've got everything here via my Q menu, my customizable buttons. Front button, shutter button, button next to the shutter button, and the button above the Q button. I also reassigned my auto exposure lock and auto focus lock button for photometry. As also is, of course, a touchable, a touch to zoom, and also force swipe function on the LCD display. And as I also said, it's the best looking LCD display, image-wise, I've ever seen. It's very, very nice and buttery. And as a glasses wearer, I really, really appreciate this. So yes, 9.5 out of 10 stars. I love the hell out of this camera. Actually, in the scheme of all my digital cameras that I both have and have owned, this sits right now at the top 3. Yeah, it does. It sits at the top 3. Number 4 in no particular order. Well, yeah, number 4 would be my Nikon D850. Number 3 might be the XH1. This is definitely number 2. And my favorite camera of all time still remains the GFX50R, because it's the camera I've been lusting after to be invented, developed, created, built for well over a decade. So that's my favorite camera, digital camera of all time, GFX50R. This is my second favorite digital camera. My third favorite is the XH1. What about the XT3? It is, but I mean, there's a special subjective personal love. I don't mean love like love, like bow wow. I mean love of the XH1. If you have an XH1 and an XT3, you know exactly what the hell I'm talking about. The XT3 is way faster, better buffer rate, but the XH1 is just a magical quality. The ergos, that super silent shutter mech. That's why the XT3 is not on my top 4 list, but it does make my top 5 list. It'll be number 5. Maybe number 4. Nikon D850 would be number 5. Anyway, this is definitely my my second favorite camera, digital camera of all time. Actually, my Nikon D4 is... I mean, move the D850 back even further. The Nikon D4 is really my top 5 at position number 4. Anyway, a 95% out of 100, or a 9.5 out of 10 review on the X-Pro3. I don't mean that jokingly. Even though I laugh, I take camera reviews wickedly seriously. Even though I laugh and I kid around just for sake of humor. It's like, that guy's not taking this review seriously. He's laughing and joking. No, it just means I'm trying to entertain you, while at the same time giving you information that would be useful. So that's it. I hope you liked this review. If you did, click the link below, or you can tell me how much you hate me. Whatever makes you happy. And this being the second day of the year 2020, I'm so glad to have done my first camera review of the year off this polished piece of perfection. And wait for it, Fujifilm. Mic drop.